Hello, hello. It is Voice of San Diego at home. It's Monday, April 20th, 2020, which otherwise is known as the 420. I'm Scott Lewis, the CEO and editor-in-chief at Voice of San Diego. Probably should have taken today off to recognize and properly observe 420. Happy 420 to those of you who are observing it. Quick update. Those of you who are watching this show on, I believe it was Wednesday, might have caught this moment. Woo! I said, oh my God, there's a bird in the house. Oh my God, there's a bird in the house. Oh crap. Much to my children's pleasure, my dog's chagrin, the bird flew into the house, had to decide whether to keep rolling or to deal with the bird, decided to deal with the bird. I didn't want some grisly scene to be played out on Voice of San Diego at home. We don't need any graphic violence, any wildlife torture on Voice of San Diego at home, trying to make you feel good and follow what's going on these days. Don't need you to see grizzled violence. But no problem. Was able to capture the bird. Was trying to get out of my little bay window by the kitchen. Bird was trying to get out, knocking its head against there. And I said, "Hey, come on, bird." Got a little bowl, a little placemat behind it. Took the bird, let the bird out at the back. Bird survived. Everybody's happy, and I got a little clip out of it that I'll never forget. Thank you to all your concern about the bird. The bird is alive and fine. Everything's fine. Everything is fine. Bird survived. Sorry I had to cut that one short. I am sorry. It was a big deal. Let's get right into it. What a week. Lot to talk about. I don't know if you saw what happened in some of these areas of town. Obviously, I wanted to say a few things about the small protests. Very small. I was just on with sports radio, and the guy was making the point. Yeah, the sports radio. That's all they got to talk about is they got to talk to Scott Lewis these days because sports is really downer. But there was a lot of talk about these protests. I watched a lot of the videos about what was happening, and I had to stop one of them. Well, I stopped them to really read their signs, and I got caught on this one. This guy here, this cool cat, look at him just chilling, just hanging out there. He's got his sign. I don't know who martial law is, but I don't know why this guy wants to end him either. Cool cat, freedom fighter here, wants to end martial law. He means martial with a M-A-R-T-I-A-L, FYI, if you're going to protest martial law in a way that gets your face all over the national social media. You're going to want to get martial right. Go with martial, M-A-R-T-I-A-L. That's not marital. It's a different word. We don't need to end marital law either. I don't know who martial law is, but we do not need to end him. This was KPBS's picture of the downtown protest. Again, not very many people. This is a Keck shirt. I think you guys know what Keck is. Alt-right has been all over Keck. It's a meme for the alt-right. I'm not sure if that's what he means to be communicating there, but something to watch. I have a take on these protesters. I have a take. First of all, you can't shut down the entire government and the entire way of life and economy for a giant group of people like the United States of America population and not expect some people to be a little upset about it and make their views known. I'm not sure this is a very representative group of many people, but I do think there should be a wide latitude among law enforcement to not crack down on these protests. I understand there's a big push among people to get at them, to give them tickets, to go nuts. There was no citations at either the Encinitas martial law protest or at the downtown one. Now, that's the way I think it probably should be, but we are investigating reports about places where citations were given for some less conservative protests or less maybe, I don't know why there were citations given. We're investigating. I think that nobody should be cited for First Amendment activity like this. I think that that's a real bad look and could really be a bad place if we're going to be cracking down or busting heads of protesters. We do not want to see that. I've been in too many protests myself where the effort to close it down caused a lot more trouble than the actual protest was causing. Now, that said, there's got to be a better way to do this, and also law enforcement has some real tough questions to answer about why some people gathering on the beach or whatever get cited, but not these people. My point being a question here from Dave Moss. Citations at the jail protests. That's what we're looking into. We heard that there were some people protesting the detainees in South Bay, the immigrant detainees, and trying to get them out or in safer situations. We are trying to look into that because, again, like I said, I personally think there should be a wide latitude for First Amendment activities. But if they're busting some folks and not others, and some of those folks are browner than others, we got a big problem. So again, probably should show some restraint from law enforcement, and I understand why they would. But if they didn't, for some other folks, they're going to get the wrath of the bird guy here. So I think that's what I'd be. So it was a hard weekend for me because this was weekend I published a piece. The politics report comes out every Saturday, and I wrote about the increased pressure on the mayor in a more polite and appropriate way to change the plan with parks. So we're one of the few places in the country, a few cities within the country at all, that have completely forbidden people from entering parks. And that's rough. That makes life rough. I understand why they did it. And it all stems from that first weekend when they said people need to be social distancing. And that weekend came and I went surfing. A bunch of other people went to the beach. A lot of people went to parks. It was a very crowded place in some of these areas. And so the mayor said, first, let's close the parking lots of these places. And then he said, no, let's close everything and just completely close the parks. And since then, their approach has been, we tried that. We tried to let people go to parks. You couldn't handle it. So no parks. But now there's pressure from all sides on the mayor. Again, not to these protesters, but actual thinking people who really want to make want to do right by the quarantine, want to do right by the efforts to prevent transmission of the virus, who say, look, we can handle this. Parks are a great place. We need vitamin D and the sun, and we can stay far apart from each other. So we're seeing Lorena Gonzalez, Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez, make that point. Barbara Bree, who's running for mayor, said we need to have a plan by May 1st to open parks. And then a few others. Diana Pitts, I quoted. She's a longtime supporter and friend of the mayor's, who said, "Why can't my kids go to the park? We got to figure something out." It does seem like there's a lot of city employees and police officers stationed at parks. We could, it seems like, transition them to enforcing social distance as opposed to don't come in here. I think it's hard, though. Obviously, the last thing we would want to see is people getting that's getting worse. If there was some sort of flare up, if public service workers got sick, and yes, this is a problem people have cited. Look, New Orleans, New York, San Francisco, a lot of other places have managed to keep parks open, and it's something to keep in mind. So I think that there is a better balance, especially if we're going to be in this for 4 months, 6 months, a year. We need to create a system to be able to handle life like this for a year, a better balance. I'll talk about my rubric for how we would make these decisions, sort of priority list. At the end of the show, we'll talk about the things that I think people should keep in mind when they're leading these public efforts, and how they should decide things. Yes, parks are open in San Francisco and Oakland. They're open in New Orleans, and I talked to a friend who helps manage the city of New Orleans and said, things are running well and crime rate's low. And people really need to get outside, and it's healthy for them. And as long as we're letting people get outside, they need more space to spread out. So if you're not going to open parks, close some damn streets. Now we need more space to walk and to be safe. All right, next up, let's turn to our favorite chart. This is the thing we've been watching every day. So this is the county's dashboard on the curve. Everybody's talking about the curve. Well, here is the curve. Reported tests, total confirmed cases, ICU numbers. You can use this and actually flip between the confirmed cases and then where they are at. Here's Encinitas, the side of that protest. Got a little bit of a bubble here, Encinitas. I don't know if you want to be not respecting the social distancing. Handy dashboard. I think other places are just now getting this information out in a poorer way. So kudos to the county for that. But we've been pushing them as well as other people have on one particular area, which is the issue of testing. County of San Diego told us that they need to be doing tens of thousands of tests per day, tens of thousands of tests per day to be able to get to the point where we can live with the risk. Testing is like our eyes on this disease. The testing is the way to see the virus. We can understand its pervasiveness. We can understand who's got it, who they've been around. If we can test, I don't think anyone thinks we're going to stamp out this virus, but if we're ever going to get to the point where we live with it, we have to understand it and where it is and who has it. And the only way to get that is through testing. To do testing. And so here are the latest numbers on the number of tests. We did a story about here last week, where we bemoaned how few tests people were getting in San Diego compared to how many they say we need. Happy to see a little bit of an increase since then. Happy to see that. But 10,000 would be way up here. 10, 20,000 would be off the screen. Where are the tests? Where are the tests? I don't care about your blame game. I don't want to hear about who's got the tests and who's not doing what and governors are being mean and the press. Get the tests. This is the most important thing right now, you tell us. So get them. This is America. Can't we do things? Let's get the tests. So we'll be following this number. I talked today about maybe we just put the number 7-day average of tests up on the site. Yeah, there's the story our teams put up. You can check out testing. There's more on that today. Jesse Marks, our reporter, Jesse Marks has been doing some research on the thing to watch out for with that. So testing only works when you combine it with tracing. Tracing is a word that's a little scary for people who are concerned about mass surveillance. Usually tracing in the epidemiological sense is you find out who has it and then you kind of like a journalist say, like, where were you? Who were you with? And trace it back. I talked a few weeks ago about that study of the CDC did in Chicago. One man did some traveling, came back, went to a birthday party and a funeral. 10 people ended up getting the disease, 3 of them dead after he went to a birthday party in a funeral. 10 people got it, 3 dead. That's contact tracing. That's what that means. Find out where they've been, talk to the people who he's been around, test them, find out where they've been, so on and so forth until you get there. The process, this was from Jesse's story, Jesse Marks, the process for restarting the life and the economy will depend on how effectively local public health officials can identify sick patients, reconstruct their steps to alert others who may also be infected, and then help isolate them. Some governments are now evaluating apps that they could bring into investigations to a much larger scale, causing researchers and activists to worry that the present emergency will open another door to surveillance. That's the thing we got to watch out for. It's a balance. Everything's a balance. Living with the disease, not living with it, quarantining, tracing and testing versus surveillance. It's all trade-offs. We're just got to be clear-eyed about these trade-offs. But I'll tell you, one sector that's going to be really interested in testing and tracing are private companies. Jesse talked to San Diego Gas and Electric locally, one of the biggest employers. They've developed a dashboard internally where they can trace where their employees have been, what they might be, how they might be sick, and who they may have contacted, and who needs to be isolated, so that they can make sure that they've got a lot of employees out there fixing power lines, all kinds of things, being around each other. They need to understand. They need to be able to do that. They need to understand who's sick, who might not be sick. And the spokesperson there, Andrea Smith, said, "It's not about invading privacy. It's about what we need to do to protect the safety of our employees and customers." If you're ever having trouble with, I saw this tweet, I don't know who did it, but it's a great point. If you're ever having trouble arguing with somebody about this, they're like, it's a hoax, or it's not a big deal, it's the flu. All you got to do is point out to them that Walt Disney World is closed. Walt Disney World is closed right now. Walt Disney World never closes. Walt Disney World's entire apparatus is built to separate you from your money. They're not gonna close unless they're genuinely worried about something, and they're gonna go crazy. They can move mountains if they think that they're being closed for no good reason. These companies are going to want to be on the forefront of both A, assuring their employees that they can work safely and not get sued if they do work, and B, that their customers can trust them. And so I think we have a really interesting discussion coming up between companies, between the government, and between all of these places that are going to want to get back open about what are we going to do to actually make sure people can go back to work, can go into these places safely. Really interesting episode of The Daily on the New York Times podcast this morning, where they talked about other places. China has a passport that they're given to people's phones that say they have immunity, they have antibodies, they can go places. Germany's considering something like that. Are we going to get to a point where we have to have some kind of passport to get into life? And what incentives will that create for people? And they talked about in the smallpox world 50, 60 years ago, where people deliberately infected each other with smallpox in different ways, infected their kids because they knew that if the kids got it in a different way, they would be much more deadly. Big discussions about civil liberties, about what we need to get to feel comfortable living with this disease without causing swarming of the patients in the hospitals. Let's reiterate a point real quick. Let's get back to the county dashboard. I can't say this enough. You guys listen to my stream. That's fine. You know me. Let's reiterate a point. Here's the thing with sorry. Whew. All right, let me try that again. All right. These are the numbers. This here, hospitalized and ICU. those are the numbers that are important along with the deaths. Everybody says, well, we trade deaths all the time for life. We live with death. We live with death with car accidents. We live with death with all kinds of problems. We don't shut down the community for death. Well, no, but there's a lot of people who get sick and get really sick. And taking care of them and making sure they're okay is just as big of a deal. And that's the burden that we're worried about. If we let everybody just go back to work and such, everything's just normal, we risk a situation where we overwhelm the hospitals with these people who need to be saved. And we get to a point where somebody may have to make a decision about who gets to be saved and who doesn't. And that's the whole purpose for this. We know that a bunch of people are going to get infected, probably millions and millions and millions of people. We just want that to happen over a longer period of time so that our hospitals can handle it. So whenever you see somebody say, like, make the point about, we can trade deaths for this. Well, what about the 10 times the number of deaths, maybe the 20 times the number of deaths who get extremely sick? Extremely sick. Those are some of the people that we're worried about as well, and the burden that they put on our healthcare system and the people in our healthcare system who die because of that. I heard there was anti-quarantine protests in San Diego. There were a few. There was a couple hundred downtown, 100 in Encinitas. All right, let's move on. Maya Sri Krishnan did a story for us, great story about calls are down for domestic violence in San Diego. San Diego Sheriff's Department received about 30 calls from February 3rd to March 1st, about a month. Between March 2nd and March 30th, that fell to 21, almost a 30% drop. It is a 30% drop. But that doesn't mean that these incidents are happening. A lot of people have less opportunity to call the police if something's wrong, their spouse doesn't go to work, or otherwise doesn't give them the opportunity to do that. Verna Griffin Tabor, the CEO for Center for Community Solutions, which provides shelters and resources to survivors of intimate partner violence. She said, quote, for people who are harming others, these are people who can't handle their emotions and stress levels. And if this is how somebody manages their stress, it's only going to get worse. We've seen in moments of crisis in the past where domestic violence will go down right at the beginning and then spike badly. There's a lot of resources in that story, voicesandiego.org. Check it out. You can find resources to help people get into a better situation or come up with a plan to get out. That's the first step. Come up with a plan to get out. Great story by Maya Sri Krishnan. All right. Let's close out on a note. Friday, I went to Costco, and I was driving to the Costco on Moreno Boulevard, and I got up to there, and there was a line about, seemed like a mile long, maybe 3/4 of a mile, half mile, I don't know. It was long. And I was like, this is crazy, a mile just to get into the parking lot driving. And so I was waiting there, and I noticed, like, I wasn't moving at all. Like, every 5 minutes you'd move like one car length up, and I did the math in my head. This is gonna be 4 hours. How can this be? I was like, I can't do my whole day here for Costco. I need to get to Costco, but not that bad. So I pulled out, drove around, and realized the line wasn't for Costco. The line was for something right behind Costco being held by the USO. USO provides service members support. So if you're in the military, USO helps you get somewhere, helps you connect with your family. But in this case, this was the third event they had put on, giving away diapers and food to service member families. 1,700 families were lined up waiting for food. Just did violence to my conscience. 1,700 families who work for the military, who were waiting hours for food. and diapers. It was just, it was a very jarring, this whole experience has been just a series of jarring moments where you realize the grocery store is weird, and the parks are roped off, and just so many different things that you don't normally. It's just extraordinary, and here I was witnessing a line for people just waiting for the basics of life, whose family member works for the military. So anyway, kudos though to the U.S. though. They don't normally provide that type of service like that. That was the third event that they did. They've adapted and shifted to be as big a service as possible to the military members and their families who need it. Great thing. Maybe put up a sign that if you're going to Costco, it's a different line. All right, final point. I offered this weekend, and I wanted to share it here, three priorities that public officials should have when they make these big decisions. 1, fix this. That's the top priority. You can leave everything closed, parks, whatever, but we got to get to a better place. You're in charge of that at the moment. Help us get there. A, does that mean we're trying to stamp out the virus completely? Okay, show us how we're going to get there, please, as soon as possible. Or if it means that we have to live with the virus, if we have to go through life understanding that it's a threat that we may have to deal with, let us know that as well. We need to understand where that's at. And that, if that involves testing and tracing, help us be part of that process. And let's make a collective decision about what level of threat we're going to live with and how we're going to reopen the economy, what steps we can take, what criteria we're going to use. Fix this. That's the most important thing. Second thing, allow as much liberty and offer as much support as possible. Help people who are hurt. The people who lost their jobs in this epidemic are themselves a type of veteran. They are the veterans of this war. They have sacrificed for this war. This was a war. This disease was being spread by the economy. So we shut down the economy, and that had consequences. And those people have lost their jobs, and they're suffering right now. We need to take care of them the way we would veterans of a war, because they have sacrificed their lives for this. So offer them as much support as possible. And along with that, as much liberty as possible. So if we can go to parks and you can figure out how to help us do that so that we can live better, we can get the vitamin D, we can protect our immune system, we can spread out, help us do that. Find out a way to enforce it so that people can still be outside and still maintain common sense distance from each other. All right, third, public officials these days are going to be making some of the biggest decisions of their entire careers. The city of San Diego has to cut $250 million from its budget. And that's just now. They have no idea what it's going to be in a year. State, the county, there's going to be incredible decisions about how we live after this that they'll have to make. They could take advantage of the opportunity, try to make big investments, make the best decisions possible for the biggest number of people possible, try to creatively fix and provide services that we may not be able to protect in the same way with the same level of staffing. Do your best to minimize the damage now. Those three principles: fix this, allow as much liberty, and provide as much support as possible to the economic veterans of this war, the economic martyrs of this war, and then minimize the damage when you're making these decisions about how to deal with the enormous, terrifying consequences economically of what's happened. That's all I got. I got to get to a meeting. I still help run Voice of San Diego. Got to check out how to make some big decisions. I consider it the challenge of my career to get through this without to make payroll through this next year. And so far we're doing it. Help us do that though. voiceofsandiego.org, VOSD.org/give, VOSD.org/give. Our reporters are out there making sense, investigating what's happening, finding things out that people don't want us to find out. They're trying to do their best to understand all these things and ask tough questions. And those people need health insurance too. Those people need support. And if you want them to keep doing that work on your behalf, please consider a small donation. If you're not in the position to, totally understand. Obviously understand. If you are, though, this is one of the services that really matters. And I very much appreciate your time. Let me know. We're going to be back here Wednesday, 1:30 p.m. Wednesday, 1:30 p.m. We're going to be talking about taking your questions. So let us know those as well. And we will talk to you again Wednesday. Cheers.